Hello and welcome to Writing Our Own Story, Small Business Life at Storyforge, Episode 2, Panic at the Writing Industry. You might be asking yourself, who's Storyforge? That's fair. We are a small business startup who are trying to revolutionize the publishing industry through a gamified writing platform. If you aren't familiar with us, check us out at storyforge.com. Now you might be asking, why a podcast? And that's also fair. A lot of podcasts are out there and they talk about experiences of other things that have happened, or happened to them in the past. We are living this right now, so everything we talk about is in real time. We're an interesting group of people with an interesting goal, and we face interesting challenges. So we thought it might be fun to talk about them and hope that anyone out there who might be listening and facing similar challenges can learn and take away from what we've experienced. My name is Tim, and I'm your host today. I'm the Senior Director of Operations and Project Management here at Storyforge. Joining me today is Beatrice, who is the Senior Director of Marketing and Social Media, and our founder, CEO, and fearless leader, Sabrina. So let's just dive into it today. Today's topic is how do you deal with a crisis in your industry? So we're recording this, it's late October 2024, and there's a lot going on in the writing world. Even non-writers have heard about the current uproar around NaNoWriMo, or National November Writing Month. No, sorry,
National
National
novel.
National Novel Writing Month, which takes place in November. A lot of words there. We're not here to break that down, although we do recommend the video by Savvy Writes Books on YouTube if you want a full understanding. But really, we're kind of here to discuss the crisis because sometimes there are crises in your industry. Crises, crisis, I don't know, whatever. And even though,
Crises.
crises, I like that. That's probably correct. Uh, Even though you've got nothing to do with them, how do you deal with them? So Storyforge exists in a similar space as NaNoWriMo. So some of it bleeds into us, whether we want it to or not. How has this kind of affected us as a business? And then kind of how has this affected us as, writers and editors and readers? Um, Beatrice, you want to start it out?
Sure. I feel like one of the things that I have seen, especially in the way that uh other businesses within the industry have handled this, that I think have been overlooked is that a lot of companies, especially bigger companies, I think we have the luxury of being a smaller one that it's still manageable to check the reactions of people. I think a lot of businesses forget that they the people that form the community that is around the business is like one of the most important things in order to have that business exist. And the first thing that we observed, and I observed especially as being in charge of marketing, is what that crisis that was specifically for Nano, but other crises that we have had in the writing industry that have been quite a lot, how they affect the people that we're trying to build community with. And if that is negatively, positively, what is their voice?
Hmm.
And when observing their voice and the way that it's affecting them, then start thinking about what our voice is. If this is something that we find similarities, if we find differences, how can we find a balance in between both of the things and kind of making like coming up with the way that we want to handle this by not existing in an echo chamber of just us and our company and the way that our team reacts, but also as a way to kind of like grab the community's perception of the issue and make sure that we're taking into account. And I haven't seen a lot of businesses do that
Yeah.
lately with this particular thing.
Yeah, and I think we have the benefit of being, like you said, being a small company, and we have a very active community who are
Yeah.
very, I hate to say it, but our community is very communicative about their feelings and their reactions. And honestly, we've only had to issue a couple of like statements, if you will. One being around like generative AI and our opposition to it, which is a topic for a later episode. But yeah, we haven't really had anything too extreme. But Sabrina, your thoughts?
On whether or not we've had anything too extreme.
I mean, just that, and just dealing with the kind of general crisis and the the writing industry, whether it be AI, NaNoWriMo, what have you.
Yeah, I mean, I liked what Beatrice was saying about really listening to the voices of the writers who are directly affected. I think that a lot of the pivots that we've made have been a direct response to the sentiment that we see online and the things that we've heard from the folks in our Discord community. Because, when Derek and I founded Storyforge, we went into it with the understanding that we were not going to know everything and that there were going to be a bunch of things that we were wrong about. And that the only way to really combat that and, continue going was going to be to just really, really listen to what the community needs. And I think that no matter what the crisis is, whether it's AI or, the loss of a trusted writing platform or whatever, we're going to be hearing the echoes of that just like rippling through the writing communities online. And if you're listening, if you're paying attention, then you can oftentimes serve the people who are feeling a little at sea in the
Hmm.
middle of those changes just by listening for what they're looking to have that they now feel they lack.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's fair to say that our user base is a fair amount of those people who we've had come from the other platforms, like, oh, this is turned for the worse, this has happened or that has happened, and we're not going to get into the nitty-gritty details, but just being that kind of bastion of hope and that openness, and it's really attracted users to us. Um, so on that note, though, what's just kind of what is your usual first reaction when you see something like that in your industry or our industry? What is your first thought? Like, what is your honest first thought? And then what is your first thought that you tell people?
My first thought is like, oh shit. That's my honest first thought.
I,
Like, oh,
I'll be
something else happened.
I'll be honest, my first thought, like after I ingest the entire thing, is how does it affect us and can we use it?
That's true. That's a good one. I think I like another thought that I have after that. It goes very well with what we're talking about because I am thinking, and I think that's the reason why we work so well when we come up with ideas, Tim, because you
Hmm.
are like, how is it affecting us? And I'm like, how is it affecting the people? And then we're both, how can we use it? So I think it's a very good balance because I'm like, what is everyone saying? And is this something that is
Hmm.
going to be relevant for better or worse? It worked pretty good.
My My first thought is somewhere in the middle of that, but it's not quite as like optimistic. It's usually like, oh no, are people going to get mad at us for something that we had no control over?
Oh,
That's like my first thought because sometimes those crises do end up being like, oh yeah, this software that you decided that you were going to use like 3 years ago apparently has been doing terrible things this whole time. And you're like, whoa, I didn't know. That's just a totally random example. That's not happened to us, but
yeah. I mean
but
that
that's
But it's
my
something
first
that
thought.
could happen.
that's a very legitimate
Yeah.
example. Like, oh, it turns out, the whatever X software that you've been using, it just comes out, they've been trafficking in illegal chimpanzees or whatever. Um,
Not the chimpanzees.
yeah,
No,
I know. But like people get mad at you, like, why are you using it? Well,
I
we
didn't
found we
know.
found this out like
Yeah.
4 days ago. Like we bought it five
Yeah.
years ago. Like what do you want from us? Um, but I guess is there really kind of a best strategy for keeping clear of these dangers or avoiding them or navigating them? Or I guess Sabrina is as our CEO, what tactics have you used to kind of steer us through these choppy waters?
Honestly, there is no way that you're gonna be able to predict what is going to set people off. Um, and so the first thought is, are people gonna be mad at us for
Hmm.
something that's related to this crisis? And then the second thought is like, how can we be like tackling that side of things because I just assume someone's going to be upset. That's maybe the more, you know, CEO crisis management side of things coming out. But I feel like if things do actually spark a bit of an uproar, no matter what the crisis ends up being, there is somewhat of a responsibility from Storyforge's side of things to say, here's where we are in the middle of this crisis.
Hmm.
And I think that transparency is the solution to a lot of the problems. To be like, here, like in the software example, in the like, okay, they've been trafficking with chimpanzees for some, and we just found out about it. Then what we would probably do is be like, well, we just found out about it. We would release a statement, we'd send it as an email, we'd send it as a an update on our tab, we'd maybe make a couple blog posts about it saying, yeah, Storyforge was part of this because we were using it. We didn't know. Now we do. Here's what we're doing to do better. And I think that that kind of transparency and letting people know that you're willing to course correct goes a really long way in managing all sorts of different crises.
I agree. Yeah, but you're right. There's no way to really avoid them all or handle everything. Because I mean, we got we got dragged into people claiming that we use AI because there's someone out there using the same name as us, and we had to
That
be
was
like, no,
terrifying.
that's not us. Like, well, no, you're AI. Like, no,
What?
see, this is their website. This is our website,
No, I
and
remember a Facebook commenter that really pissed me off
Ah,
because it was under our video that was like, there's an AI company that's using our name. That's not us. And under that video, he commented like, I just looked you up and I found that you use AI. Fake, like busted. I'm
it's
like,
like
dude,
yeah,
like please use your critical thinking
I
skills
was
just
gonna
a
say people
little
some
bit.
like really, really some people don't have critical thinking
hmm
skills. And that's just a reality that you have to take into consideration whenever you're releasing statements and doing stuff like that. And I think another way, it's impossible to catch everything, but I think the way that I try to catch anything that I think that it goes along with kind of what I was saying before. It's like trying not to be in an echo chamber, like not being
hmm
inside your own specific bubble of the people that do the same thing that you do, that think the same way that you do, and that are frequenting the online or the real spaces that are the same as you do. So that way you can be aware of other things that are happening. And sometimes it's like not things that you agree with or not spaces that you particularly would choose to be in, but by having awareness of the rest of the things that are happening in the world, then you can actually formulate, number one, your own opinions of like, yeah, I don't like these spaces, or hey, maybe this is happening that will affect us, or just like I just think that kind of awareness is very important whenever you're doing anything that's especially for other people, because it's spaces that maybe those other people kind of frequent too. And it goes back to the idea of like sometimes big companies don't kind of have like the luxury of being more present because they have more things to worry about. But at least now that we can kind of like be chronically online, because honestly, like I am the chronically online like resident of like Storyforge. Knowing how these issues that maybe are not affecting me could be affecting someone else in the community, and maybe it's something that aligns with Storyforge that we feel that it's relevant to mention. That's something maybe I wouldn't have known because it's not affecting me personally.
Speaking of that, though, so obviously, what's going on with generative AI and what's happened with NaNoWriMo, um, what kind of lasting impact can that have on an industry like the writing industry that's so full of hopeful and ambitious people? Like, how does that affect it, and can it recover?
One thing that I have seen personally, Mm, I think it's something that was already happening in the like English speaking communities, but I am seeing now reflected in the Spanish speaking communities as well, is that people are taking back control of their own works and their own spaces. And I have seen more and more people looking for different publishing avenues that is not the status quo, which is also something that we are very invested on because we don't agree with the way that the industry currently works, with all the thing with underrepresented voices and everything. And I have seen a lot of more people online expressing their interest in like hiring freelance editors, self-publishing, not trusting the entirety of their marketing to a publishing house, or not kind of like skipping and not going through agents anymore or anything, because so many of these crises have happened, and I think way more that we are not even aware, because we can't be aware of everything, that have made people feel even more disillusioned. I do see a little bit of hopelessness out there, which makes me extremely sad. But I think that mostly I see people kind of tired and kind of upset and kind of taking things on their own hands. And that's kind of beautiful because at least you know if there is something that you would need to course correct or change or improve, it would be in your own hands. But if you're just giving the entirety of your work with to another company and then it just turns out that they were trafficking chimpanzees, then you kind of have your hands tied. That's like the silver lining that I've
Hmm.
seen of all of this.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely seen it. Like we've seen the reactions of people. We've made some new friends because of it, with people starting their own versions of NaNoWriMo and the like. So I think you're right. There is a silver lining, but there is just a lot of sadness when something so revered kind of crashes like
I
that.
am usually the sad and depressed one, so I'm trying not to be sad and depressed right now.
Hey, we've been over this. The dark cloud role in the company is mine. You are
I
the
know!
sunshine and happiness.
I have to be the sunshine. Okay,
Sabrina, any
okay.
thoughts?
I'm trying to think all the thoughts at once. I'm sorting through them in my head. I was hoping that, having Beatrice go first would clarify things in my head. I would be like, oh yeah, I sorted through everything I wanted to say, and now I have a perfect tangent. But honestly, the state of the industry right now is pretty grim in a lot of ways. And everything is very complicated by the generative AI. I do think AI is a little bit of a fad. I don't think it's going away, but I do think that the level that it's being incorporated into a lot of different things is going to taper down in a bit. Like I could see someone going like, "This is an AI washing machine. It's going to change the way that you wash clothes." Um, and that seems a little excessive to me. Generative AI I think it has the potential to be really cool. I don't think that it is nearly regulated enough. And so the problem right now is that although the technology exists and has the potential to do a lot of good in the future, it is definitely harming a lot of people in the process of getting there. And in the meantime, while it's getting to that point that it is more respectful of artists of all kinds, um, people need a place where they can feel protected from it, where they can feel like their work is not going to be stolen from right under their noses. And I think that's what Storyforge does, is just provides that safe haven while things are kind of settling out in the rest of the world.
Way to tie that back in. That was very well done. Uh,
Wow.
but you made me think. I was reading a marketing email the other day, and actually adding like AI to a lot of products and descriptions is now becoming detrimental. Like they're seeing that, saying like, "Oh, this is AI powered, whatever." Like people are less willing to trust it just because of how it seems like how fast AI popped up, and now it's everywhere. It's unregulated, and I don't think people have a high level of trust in it anymore, or yet, I should say.
And we have even seen it with like bigger products. Like I remember that I think it was like about a month or so that the AI from Google started pulling answers from Reddit. So people started just plaguing Reddit with like very, very, very untrue facts about stuff because they knew that the Google AI was not going to be able to fact check it. And then it actually caused like some very funny but also annoying like misinformation out there.
It'd be so weird if someone turned that into a D&D game too.
Oh, crazy, right? I wonder if that
Now
has
he's
ever
tying it
happened
back.
before. Hmm,
Oh, all right.
weird.
But any last thoughts on this topic before we get into the creativity conundrum?
I'm excited for the creativity conundrum. I love alliteration.
Yes.
Okay, I'm
Alliteration,
sorry, I
yeah.
don't speak English. No hablo inglés. Aliteración. There we
It's
go.
like almost the same word.
Yeah, I just didn't know if it was A or A. Uh,
Ah. Fair enough. Fair enough.
All right.
No other thoughts. I'm good.
Okay. So here's the question. This is less of a conundrum, but just more of a general question. What is the longest you've ever committed to a quote creative project? Take that for whoever you will. And did you end up completing it or not?
I would like to take this one first.
Okay. I have a good one, but you go
The
first.
Okay. So the one that I want to mention is the one that started Storyforge. The whole reason that I got so frustrated with the publishing system is because I was trying to adapt my favorite book, Villains by Necessity by Eve Forward, into a graphic novel. And I reached out to her, I got the permissions and everything. And that was way back when I was like, man, how old was I? I was 17 and I'm 24 now. And I have been working on that project since then. And it was in like 2020 that I had an artist, I had a script, I had everything all ready to go. And that's when I started having trouble with the publishing. And so founding Storyforge has been a great step forward for many other authors who are also trying to get their work published, but it has not been great for my creative project. And so it is still in process, and I do come back to it probably like a couple times a month. I'll like go back to it and sketch out a comic book page and edit some of the things that I wrote, and then I'll set it down again and go back to helping everyone else. But that's been in progress for 6 or 6.5 years, maybe now. That's the longest one I have.
That's a pretty good one. Mine is not that long and slightly more embarrassing. So in sixth grade, it was around like fifth, sixth grade, I got really into Star Wars and I started writing. Essentially, I didn't know what fan fiction was at the time, but essentially inserting myself and friends into Star Wars, and it was all handwritten. So notebook pages, like loose leaf paper. Um, it was like at least 200 pages. There was no real plot. Like it just like things just happened. Um, Although ironically, like one of the like closest things I had to a plot point actually did get used by a Star Wars book later. I'm like, oh, I should sue somebody. But um, I think I wrote on that from probably like sixth grade till I think probably I probably gave it up in like ninth grade or something like that. But it was legitimately like 250 front and back handwritten pages.
Wow.
It did
That's
not
super
have an end.
impressive.
That's one word for it.
No, impressive is the word. That's a lot of
That's
dedication
a
and time that
lot.
you put into that project.
Yeah, I wish it had been better. It
It
was
might
real
not have
bad.
been good. I don't know,
I feel
It
like
was
you
but
not
learned a
it's
good.
lot from
definitely
it.
It was
a
not
lot of
good.
heart and soul put into that. That's the first draft, and first
Yeah.
drafts are always bad.
It was pretty bad.
Yeah, shout out to our
Yeah,
episode
shout out
before this
episode
one.
one.
Yeah.
Beatrice, you got one?
I think it's so my autistic brain's not working because like for me it's like okay, but what do you mean exactly? Like us, I'm trying to like determine where a project begins and ends because like in theory my entire writing career has been a very big creative expression project, but I could also like take specific books on it. But I'll just take my entire writing career as a big creative expression project. I started writing, I had to actually do the math 15 years ago. And the reason why I started writing was as a kind of like way of do a lot of like catharsis and understanding myself and my own emotions and all of that stuff, and doing self inserts, which it's very funny because I was like, what, like 13, I think. Yeah, the math says I was 13. And I did a very like generic cliche isekai of like, there is a long forgotten princess that wakes up in a magical, mystical world. And all these people are like, oh, you're the lost princess. That was me. That was the character literally based on myself. But little by little, that particular story was planned to be a saga, and I have like 3 books written of it. I just need to like go back to them because I did it when I was like 15. But that helped me understand how to kind of like work through my own issues in a way in writing by giving them to a character. And that has been probably like the longest project that I have, in the sense of like it has continued being with me and transformed the way that that concept looks in my life. So little by little, all my books started just having like little self inserts of me. But I think if you read through them in a sequence, you understand literally my entire life through all these different books, depending on the things that the characters go through, the genre of the stories, and generally like the things that happen to them and the way that they think. So if you put all my things together, it's kind of just like a very long collage of a reflection of myself. And I do like kind of like take all of that as like the same thing,
I
divide
look
into little versions.
I look forward to the anthology collector's edition being released.
Oh my god, imagine. That would be amazing.
That would be so cool.
It would be
Big set of
huge.
books like this big, hardcover.
I saw a video of someone that took every single Harry Potter book and been like did like book binding of all of them, and it was like this big.
I believe it.
I imagine that.
That's really big.
It was. I'll
Yeah,
send you guys
I
the
actually
video.
have them in hardcover still. They're the later ones are pretty thick.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my project. And if it's like a specific book, the book that I'm working on, I started it, I believe before the pandemic. I think it was like 2019. And it's very significant because a lot of things happened that we don't have to go into detail that were due to external factors that prevented me from completing that project or giving it the love and appreciation that it deserved. And I haven't given up yet. So I think that's also pretty cool because I'm trying to self-publish it now. And fingers crossed, I want to give up because maintaining motivation in one project is very hard for me.
All right. Perfect. All right. Any last thoughts on either the creativity conundrum or our small business topic? Are we good to
I
go?
I feel like I'm going to be the person that always comes up with like the message at the end of the
I'm fine with it.
episode.
I just facilitate the
Um,
conversation. You do the talking.
I love talking. It's fun. Oh, I have two things that I would like people to kind of like get from all of this insanity conversation that we had. The first one is in regards of crisis, and it's like don't forget that the voices of the people that are important for the business. It's not only the corporation, it's also the community that is around that. And a lot of the times, when you have a community, that community has even an emotional investment in you, I rather say. So by not forgetting about their voices, you can do a better job in acting more towards their well-being, because I think if you are not a shitty person, that's kind of like the point. Sometimes you need to make sure that you're protecting the community that you have worked so hard to build with. And for the creativity conundrum is something that I would have liked to hear myself, which is about like the whole consistency with projects. It's okay to jump from one project to another. That doesn't mean that you're not going to go back to that one project that you really love. Sabrina, you built an entire company out of a single project and you haven't given up on it. I know that for me, several years ago, if I had switched from working in a comic to building a company, I would have been afraid that, oh, I'm never going to work on this comic ever again if I don't do it at this moment. But that's not how reality works. And creativity is chaotic and beautiful. And it's okay if you are chaotic and beautiful with it as well.
Perfect. Sabrina, anything else? Otherwise, I think that's a good place to end.
That was beautiful. I don't no, I'm good. I don't
Next
want to say anything else. It was
next
beautiful.
time you can go first.
Okay, sounds good.
I'm
All right.
sorry.
Well, that's our show for today. Thanks for listening, and we will see you at the Forge.